After an unexpected pregnancy, Willow the bobcat was finally going into labor. But when her newborns arrived, the animal care team at Hillside Nature Reserve witnessed something deeply unsettling. One of the kittens was in grave danger, and they faced an impossible choice that could cost them everything. Before you watch, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss another touching story like this one, and write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Willow, who was known for keeping to herself and staying alone, had been watched closely for weeks because her strange behavior confused the people taking care of her. That late afternoon, Dr. James Patterson, the vet on duty, and Nathan Carter, the main wildlife expert, stood outside Willow's living area watching her with worry. The normally quiet bobcat walked back and forth without stopping, her smooth fur moving with stress. Her bright golden eyes, usually so peaceful and focused, looked troubled and unclear. Sometimes she made deep, rough sounds from her throat that made the reserve workers feel uneasy. Willow kept pacing for hours, only stopping now and then to crouch down low with her tail moving wildly. James and Nathan looked at each other with concern as they suddenly understood what was happening. Willow was going into labor. They knew she was going to have babies, but they weren't sure exactly when. This was happening sooner than they expected, and it made everyone rush to get ready. "She's starting," James said quietly, watching Willow through the fence. "Earlier than we thought," Nathan replied, his voice tense. The team thought Willow would have 2 or maybe 3 kittens based on how round her belly looked. The medical tests they did just a few days earlier showed everything seemed fine, but her restless behavior and the early timing made everyone nervous. Having babies at a wildlife reserve was always unpredictable, and a lot was at stake. Willow was an important part of their program to protect animals, since she'd been saved from people illegally trapping animals for fur and brought back to health so she could live in this protected wild area. The birthing space had been set up very carefully, with cameras installed so they could watch what happened without bothering Willow. The reserve workers watched nervously from the viewing room as she finally went into the den, breathing hard and fast. Willow's age made them worry even more. At 8 years old, she was getting close to being too old to have babies for bobcats, so this pregnancy was both a wonderful gift and a risk. After almost an hour of labor, Willow pushed hard and the first kitten came out. The staff all breathed out in relief as the tiny, wet baby moved around and made its first small squeaky sounds. Willow right away started cleaning her kitten, her rough tongue carefully washing the delicate newborn. Soon after, a second kitten was born, and then a third one. Each birth made the staff excited as they watched the healthy, squirming kittens with amazement. When the fourth kitten was born, Willow looked completely worn out. Her sleek body moved heavily with each breath as she pulled her kittens close, her natural instincts working even though she was so tired. James and Nathan looked at each other, amazed by the miracle they were seeing. 4 kittens was an incredible result for a bobcat her age. But Willow wasn't done yet. With another deep, rough sound and a strained push, she gave birth to a 5th kitten. The staff watched in astonishment as this healthy kitten joined its siblings, its coat already showing the distinctive markings. 5. Nathan breathed in disbelief. "I've never seen 5 healthy kittens from a bobcat her age." But then, just when they thought the birthing was complete, Willow's body tensed once more. With one final guttural growl and an exhausted push, she gave birth to a 6th kitten. The room became completely quiet as the camera zoomed closer to the newborn. Something was very wrong. While the first 5 kittens were normal-sized with coats that already had faint spots and stripes showing, the 6th one was frighteningly small and weak. Its fur was thin and uneven, showing pale, almost see-through skin underneath. The tiny creature barely moved at all, its legs hanging limp and clumsy. James right away understood how serious this was. "That one's in real trouble," he said under his breath, already getting ready to help. "Do you think it'll make it?" Nathan asked, shaking his head. "I don't know," James admitted honestly. Nathan nodded with a grim look, his many years of experience telling him this kitten probably wouldn't survive. But before they could go near the enclosure, they had to think about how the very protective mother might react. Willow, even though she was exhausted, was paying attention to any movement outside her den. Her sharp eyes followed everything the staff did, her body getting tense and defensive whenever someone came too close. Bobcats, especially mothers with new babies, were known for being unpredictable. The staff had no idea how Willow would react if they tried to take the struggling kitten. "We need to get that kitten out of there," James said firmly. "But how?" Nathan asked, looking at Willow through the monitor. "She's not going to just let us walk in." While they talked about what to do next, something they didn't expect happened. Willow stepped away from her kittens, staring at the tiny, still figure of her sixth baby. She pushed it gently with her nose, making soft, sad sounds as if trying to make it respond. When she heard the vet team coming closer, her reaction surprised everyone. Instead of getting aggressive, Willow moved to the side of the den, her body looking uncertain but not threatening. It seemed like she knew the humans were there to help. "Look at that," Nathan whispered in amazement. "She's giving us permission." Seeing this as a good sign, James and Nathan walked forward carefully. The other bobcats in the nearby living areas watched silently, their usual restlessness replaced by an almost strange stillness. James, wearing gloves and ready for Willow to resist, slowly went into the den. Willow watched closely but didn't try to stop him as he gently picked up the weak kitten and backed away to the examination table they'd set up nearby. The mood was full of tension as James did a quick check. The kitten's breathing was weak, its tiny chest barely moving up and down. It was much too thin, its bones showing through its fragile skin. "This doesn't look good," James said quietly as he worked. The staff moved quickly, giving it fluids and putting the kitten in a warm incubator to bring its body temperature back to normal. Willow stayed at the opening to her den, her golden eyes locked on the humans as they worked. Even though she seemed calm, the staff kept a respectful distance, knowing that any quick movement could trigger her protective instincts. The team focused all their efforts on saving the tiny kitten, who they decided to call Brooke. The situation was critical. Brooke had been born with a serious birth defect that made it unable to nurse properly, and without immediate intervention, survival seemed almost impossible. The staff talked with wildlife experts and vets from all over the country, desperately seeking any knowledge that might help. "We're losing it," one technician said on the second night, watching Brooke's vital signs drop. The first 72 hours were the worst. Brooke's body temperature kept falling dangerously low despite the incubator. The kitten refused the tube feeding, its tiny body rejecting the formula. James spent entire nights by Brooke's side, adjusting medications and monitoring every breath. "Come on, little one," he whispered during one particularly frightening moment when Brooke's breathing nearly stopped. "Fight for us." On the third day, Brooke's heart rate became irregular. The staff gathered around, their faces drawn with exhaustion and fear. "Should we call it?" one of the younger vets asked softly. "No," James said firmly, though his own voice wavered. "Not yet." He tried a different formula mixture, one that a specialist from across the country had suggested as a last resort. For agonizing minutes, nothing changed. Then, almost imperceptibly, Brooke's breathing steadied. "Wait," Nathan said, leaning closer to the incubator. "Look." Brooke's tiny paw twitched, then moved more deliberately. The kitten's mouth opened, and for the first time, it seemed to accept the feeding tube without resistance. "That's it," James breathed, hardly daring to hope. But the battle was far from over. Over the following days, Brooke would rally and then decline, keeping the entire team on an emotional roller coaster. There were moments when they thought they'd turned a corner, only to face new setbacks. A dangerous infection set in on day 5, requiring aggressive antibiotic treatment. Brooke's already fragile immune system struggled to fight it off. Temperatures spiking again, a technician reported anxiously. "We might lose the fight here." The staff worked in rotating shifts, refusing to leave Brooke alone even for a moment. Nathan found James asleep in a chair beside the incubator one morning, still holding the feeding syringe. "You need rest," Nathan said gently. "So does Brooke," James replied, his eyes bloodshot. "And Brooke needs me awake." Willow, meanwhile, continued caring for her other 5 kittens, but her behavior remained unusual. She barely slept, constantly watching the area where the humans worked. Several times each day, she would cry out low, mournful sounds that seemed to be calling for her missing baby. "She knows," one of the staff members observed. "She's asking about Brooke." By the end of the second week, the team was exhausted and running on pure determination. Brooke had survived longer than anyone expected, but remained critically weak. Then, on day 16, something shifted. Brooke's eyes, which had been shut tight since birth, began to flutter. The kitten's movements, though still feeble, showed slightly more coordination. Most importantly, Brooke began actively seeking food rather than passively accepting it. "James, come look at this," Nathan called out one morning. Brooke was actually crying for food, its tiny mouth opening eagerly when the feeding tube approached. "I don't believe it," James said, his voice catching. "Is this really happening?" The patchy fur slowly began to fill in, revealing the distinctive markings of a healthy bobcat. The infection cleared. Brooke's weight, though still concerningly low, finally started trending upward. Each small victory was met with cautious celebration by the team, who had grown fiercely protective of the little fighter. But they all knew the biggest test was still ahead. "Any improvement?" Nathan asked one morning, already knowing the answer from James's exhausted but hopeful expression. "Yes," James said, allowing himself a small smile for the first time in weeks. "Real improvement this time." "Then it's time to think about Willow," Nathan said seriously. "Brooke needs its mother." The words hung in the air, bringing a new wave of anxiety to the team. Bringing Brooke back to Willow and the rest of the babies would be the most delicate and dangerous process yet. The connection between a mother bobcat and her kittens is essential for their growth, and the team feared that the long separation might have broken that precious bond forever. What if Willow rejected Brooke now? What if the other kittens, so much larger and stronger, hurt their fragile sibling? What if all their work had been for nothing? When the day finally arrived, the entire team gathered in the observation room. The tension was overwhelming. James carefully carried Brooke's transport container toward Willow's enclosure, his hands shaking slightly. "This has to work," he said quietly to Nathan. "After everything, this has to work." He placed Brooke a few feet away from Willow, then slowly backed away, barely breathing. Willow, who had been nursing her 5 healthy kittens, immediately lifted her head. Her nostrils flared as she caught Brooke's scent. For several long seconds, she didn't move, simply staring at the tiny kitten. The silence in the observation room was deafening. "Come on, Willow," someone whispered. Willow stood up slowly, leaving her other kittens behind. She approached Brooke with deliberate, careful steps. Her ears were forward, alert but not aggressive. She stopped just inches from Brooke and lowered her head. The staff held their breath collectively, hearts pounding. Willow sniffed Brooke thoroughly, her nose touching the kitten's tiny body from head to tail. Brooke, seeming to sense its mother, let out a small, weak cry. For one terrible moment, Willow pulled back and the team's hearts sank. "No," James breathed. "Please no." But then Willow leaned forward again. Her rough tongue extended, and she began to groom Brooke with slow, deliberate strokes. The same meticulous care she showed her other kittens. "She remembers," Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "She remembers her baby." Willow continued grooming Brooke for several minutes, her maternal instincts fully engaged. Then, in a gesture that brought tears to every person watching, she gently picked up the tiny bobcat by the scruff of its neck. She carried Brooke back to where her other 5 kittens lay sleeping, and carefully nestled the smallest one into the warm pile of siblings. She circled the complete litter once, then lay down beside them, pulling all 6 close with her body. "I can't believe it," Nathan said, wiping his eyes openly now. "After everything, after all those weeks." "She never forgot," James added softly, his own face wet with tears. "She was waiting for Brooke to come home." The observation room erupted in quiet celebration, staff members hugging each other and crying with relief and joy. Against impossible odds, Brooke had not only survived but was now back where it belonged, accepted and cherished by its resilient mother. The other kittens sniffed Brooke with curiosity, quickly accepting their smallest sibling. Within minutes, they arranged themselves protectively around Brooke, as if understanding how fragile it was. As weeks became months, Brooke grew and thrived beyond expectations. The once fragile kitten transformed into a lively, adventurous young bobcat, often leading its siblings in playful activities. Willow's unwavering care had given all 6 kittens the foundation they needed to flourish. The story of Willow and Brooke became a symbol of hope, drawing worldwide attention to the Hillside Nature Reserve. The reserve installed a live stream camera, allowing viewers globally to watch the bobcat family. Donations poured in, funding conservation efforts and ensuring continued care for the animals. Did this story touch your heart? Now imagine yourself in Dr. James Patterson's shoes during those harrowing first 72 hours, Brooke's tiny body fighting for every breath, the team exhausted and losing hope, everyone urging you to let go. Would you have found the strength to keep fighting for that fragile life? Yes or no? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.